Participation. Everybody wants participation, but how do you get it? How can you get a team to work together? And when you get them working together, how do you get them to move forward together? The technology of participation turns the diversity of a group into its greatest gift and generates decisions and action that everyone can agree with. The Technology of Participation, or ToP methods, developed by the Institute of Cultural Affairs, have been used in thousands of companies, organizations, and communities on every continent since the early 1970s. With ToP methods, the greater the number of stakeholders that are involved in the process, the more creativity and motivation will be gathered, and more effective and long-lasting the results will be. This video describes the theory and use of the ToP-focused conversation method, which is the foundation for all ToP planning technologies, and the ToP Consensus Workshop, which is a basic tool for any group facilitator. The ToP-focused conversation method is designed to improve communication, promote trust, forge team spirit, and enhance creativity. This method is the most versatile of the technology of participation and can be used in almost any situation. We call the focused conversation method a life method because it is based on a pattern of thinking that we all use when we think clearly. By recognizing this basic pattern of thinking, you will have access to a very powerful tool that can help you in your individual work, in one-on-one relations, and in group settings. An easy way to illustrate this pattern of thinking is from a simple everyday example. Suppose you are walking along when suddenly your friend Bob throws something toward you. You are faced with a decision. Will you catch it, or will you step aside? You have only a brief moment to decide, but several complex levels of thinking are put into play to make the decision. The first is the objective level, which is about facts and perception. In this case, you simply perceive something. An object is in the air. You don't know what it is. It's coming straight at you. It looks hard. Bob threw it. The second is the reflective level. You make associations, relate your perception to previous things, and experience emotion. You feel the shock of surprise and are slightly threatened. You've never been a good catcher. You like Bob, who would never hurt you. You are somewhat confused. The third is the interpretive level. At this level, you interpret the significance of what is happening. You guess it is a softball. You think you can probably catch it. If you catch it, you might impress Bob. The fourth is the decisional level. At this level, you decide what you're going to do and begin to act on your decision. In this case, you decide to catch the object. These four levels of thinking usually occur unconsciously when a quick decision is required, like catching a thrown object. They can also be unconscious over longer periods of time for other decisions. But the pattern of thinking is constantly occurring in everyday life. This diagram shows how the four levels of thinking are related. Objective or O level is represented by a series of lines, the basic stuff of life. These are objective facts, what you see, hear, or perceive in many other ways. This level of thinking is about what you perceive through your senses. However, you constantly react to this perceived reality. There is limited conscious control over this reflective or R level of thinking. You make fast unconscious associations between this and past experiences, real or imagined. You sometimes have gut-level emotional responses to the perceived reality. You do, however, control the interpretive or I level of thinking. At this level, you begin to interpret the significance of both the objective reality and your reflective response. At the interpretive level, you create meaning and assign value to the experience. You consider implications for the future and weigh up pros and cons of alternative options. Finally, the perceived reality, your reflective response, and your interpretation of its meaning become the object of a decision. The decisional or D level may be to do nothing, or it may be to take some action now or in the future. The D level could make a pronouncement on the situation, like scary or indifferent, or could label it priority. These four levels of thinking can occur in a split second, like when a dog barks at you. or over an hour when you're reviewing a financial statement, or over several days when considering a new job. They are often not linear, but cycle back and forth. But each level can affect the final decision. In the example of the thrown object, if you cannot see the object clearly, you might not try to catch it. If you do not associate with Bob as a good friend, you might move aside. If you interpret from the size and speed that it is too heavy, you might not try. You might decide to send a message to Bob and let the object drop.
Let's look at another example of these 4 levels of the thought process. Imagine that your accounting section has, unknown to you, created a new chart showing a downturn in sales and put it on the wall in a place where you often walk by. You stroll by unaware of anything until suddenly you look up and see a big sales chart with a plummeting arrow. The first level is simply an objective one of perception. The fact of plummeting sales makes itself evident. Next comes your reflective gut-level response. You're indignant that somebody put the chart there. Heads will whirl. You're angry with your colleague, Bob, who didn't send the information about your big sale to the accounting department. You're suddenly gripped by a stomach-turning fear. Didn't Maria just lose her job last week? But then you stop and really think about the chart. Perhaps it wasn't put there for your personal benefit, but for someone else's. Maybe the managers are trying to show you you're constantly behind in sending in your sales reports. Maybe it's Lakshmi playing a practical joke. Then you stop and put all the pieces together, the chart, your response, and your interpretation of it, and decide what you're going to do about it. I'll get those reports in right away and just show them who's the best. Since everybody's sales are down, I'll just work harder and go after that promotion I really deserve. Let's consider for a moment some of the interactions that occur between 2 people. You ask Lakshmi about the results of a meeting you couldn't attend, and she tells you that a decision was made to slash a department, and that she has already started thinking about implementing it. Lakshmi has told you only about the decisional level, and you are probably left scratching your head. What's going on? Perhaps you bump into Bob first and ask him about the meeting. He gives you a detailed and factual but boring account of who said what. He is telling you about the objective level, and you are probably left anxious to know what really happened. When you ask Maria about the meeting, she responds from her reflective level and says she's having a hard time talking about it because she's so upset about the whole thing. She says everybody was angry and it reminded her of that terrible last job that she had. You get caught up in her emotion, but you still don't know what happened.
If you are aware of the objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional levels of thinking, you will be less subject to manipulation by others. If you recognize how the 4 levels of the thinking process work in other people, you can help unblock the decision-making process. For example, a straightforward committee recommendation can be stalled indefinitely by members of a committee who mention some discomfort with the recommendation. If you take the time to find out what the discomfort is, you might be able to get them to suggest a small acceptable change to the recommendation. At the objective level, you want to be sure that all members have read and understood the language used in the written recommendation. A couple of words misunderstood might be the cause of the problem. At the reflective level, you might check if this recommendation has reminded them of some other previous experience in the past, negative, positive, painful, or otherwise. A negative or painful association could be the cause of the block. At the interpretive level, you want to find out if they have considered the importance and impact of the recommendation, if it is implemented, and if it is not. They could discuss the implication of ideas that they have. At the decisional level, you want to find out what change will improve the recommendation and how it will be implemented, and by whom and when.
Let's look at what usually happens in a traditional planning group when the thinking process is short-circuited, going from information directly to decision. The group leader gives some information and then asks what everyone thinks should be done. Lakshmi hears the information and immediately processes it to the decisional level, telling everyone else her decision about what she thinks should be done. She will likely want everyone to decide quickly as well, and might spend the entire meeting defending or revising her decision. Bob, on the other hand, is still at the objective level, stalled while trying to piece together some basic information that he doesn't fully understand. He may not have read the notes sent out ahead of time. Maria is at the reflective level with a lot of associations with this topic. She's very squeamish about the whole situation and can't get past the feeling of being blamed. You are sitting there in the interpretive level, trying to get everyone else to understand the serious implications of the information and talk about various options. Everyone is caught up at a different level of the thinking process. To try to force a decision at this stage of thinking will cause anger and disenchantment all around. The meeting could turn out to be a fiasco with everyone on a different track, some ready to get out there and implement, some angry because of misunderstandings, some others blaming the boss for not having a good planning process for resolving the situation. One of the major benefits of the focused conversation method is the time and money that can be saved in decision-making when hidden and unconscious factors are brought out into the open. You can help the entire team experience the benefits of participation by using the focused conversation method in a group setting. When a group of people sits around the planning table, they often share information and decide how to act on it. But the way in which the information is shared is a vital part of the decision-making process. The focused conversation method is designed to allow everyone to participate in the decision-making so that you get the best follow-up action with the greatest commitment and with the least confusion in a short time. ToP focused conversation method could lead to a more productive meeting. First, all participants are asked to focus their attention on the objective level of information. What specific parts of the information are most clear to them? What parts need more explanation? What other information do we know? At this point, Bob's problems could have been cleared up. After the participants understand the information, they are asked to focus on the next level. Does this remind them of similar situations in the past? Does anything in the report make them uncomfortable or anxious? Or perhaps breathe a sigh of relief? Now Maria would get a chance to get her difficulty out in the open and dealt with. Next, the group focuses on the interpretive level. Questions could be asked like, what is the importance of this situation? What implications does it have? What are different ways of approaching it? You would get a chance to explain the vital points you wanted to make. When everyone has had their say, the group can move to the decisional level. Questions can be asked like, what do we need to do? What actions should we take? By this time, everyone will be open for Lakshmi's suggestions on what should be done, and they may have some constructive suggestions of their own. Even if participants are unaware of the thinking process going on in the group, the focused conversation method will help because it will move the group along a natural progression of thinking and will bring out into the open things that have to be dealt with in order to make a decision and to act.
There are many occasions to use the focused conversation method. A team reflection at the end of a seminar is an excellent one. You could ask the following questions at the ORIND levels, waiting for several answers between questions. What phrases do you remember from the seminar? What was the high point of the seminar? What was the low point? What insight did you take from the seminar? How will you use next week what you learned at the seminar? Another time to use the focused conversation method would be in briefing a team on a new policy. After reading the statement together as a team, you could ask these questions, waiting for answers in between. Which sentences stood out for you? What clarifications are needed? What situations does this policy remind you of? What are the implications for our division? What changes will we need to make?
Another excellent place to use a focused conversation is around the dinner table with your family. At the objective level, each family member might share one thing that happened to them that day. At the reflective level, members could identify highlights or challenges during the day. At the interpretive level, members might state what they learned from these experiences or how these events have contributed to their lives. At the decisional level, members might share how they might approach situations differently in the future and what they're planning to do tomorrow.